we will have Johan Hjälmarstrand, who will take us on a journey towards a more secure and agile way of working. He'll be telling us how Crosskey Banking Solutions went from a little visibility of the use of open source components to now automatically managing open source risks across their entire software development lifecycle. So, with that being said, welcome, Johan. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Hello. I'm going to talk a bit about Crosskey as a company and our journey, our PCI journey, and how we have a little bit of history and how we have worked ourselves into being more secure and having more security in our way of working. A little bit about myself. My name, Johan Hjälmarstrand. I have recently changed name, so my previous surname was Arvidsson. I've been in the business for about 15 years and started in a Crosskey company as a developer and then as a team manager. Now I'm a systems architect in the card and mobile payments department. Overall function is that I coach the teams, and additionally I keep a track of PCI, DSS, and operational security in general in the card department. One of my big interests in life is to build violins. A little bit of curiosity there. Crosskey is a company that was formerly the IT department of the Bank of Åland. So the Bank of Åland had an IT department and they had a bank system, and it was a really good bank system. So another company wanted to have that bank system, so we just did pretty much a copy paste. But at that time the risk was too high, so we needed to create another subsidiary company. So Crosskey was born, and since then we have grown quite a lot, but we are still a smallish company, around 300 employees. And since we started with the bank business, we also have added capital market systems and card systems. So what we do is that we are selling these systems as a system as a service. So we develop all the systems and take care of them and host them and so on. And our main office is in Mariehamn, Åland Island. We also have offices in Stockholm and Helsinki and Turku. Here is some of our customers. S-Bank in Finland is our biggest customer when it comes to volume. And we have customers in Sweden also. After we had created the bank system, the Bank of Åland also wanted a credit card system. So that's where our journey started. So first we tried to buy this as a service from another company. So that project went on for a while, but that company went bankrupt or something. I don't remember what happened. But anyway, there we were. We didn't have any solutions. We had this crazy idea that, well, let's build it ourselves then. So that journey started. And the problem at that time was that we hadn't that much resources. So we thought that, okay, we create the specifications and we have some other people doing it. So the first version was actually created by consultants. And the first version included a card lifecycle application, where you have like card applications and GL bookings, general ledger, and transaction booking, and so on. But this was not a PCI certified at that time, and it was, as I said, built mainly offshore. And when we got it, it like kind of worked, and we had quite a lot of trouble in the first version, I can tell you. And at that point, we also had connections to our i5 mainframe environment. So the authorization application were running there, and actually our database were also running on i5. After a while, it's kind of stabilized, and we got something that worked in production pretty well. But then we got a new customer, and we saw that, okay, this is not working. The current version is not working. We need to switch database from DB2 to Oracle. We need to create multi-tenancy in our applications and so on. So we actually just left the old branch where we had our old installation. If I remember, it was 3.8, and we just left it. We just created a new branch and worked from there. And in this new version, we fixed a lot of issues that we had in the previous version, because there were domain and constructual issues in it that didn't, all our requirements weren't fulfilled with that version. And now also with this new customer, we connected towards the MasterCard directly, and we also built our authorization module and moved that to Java. And now at this point in time, more eyes were on us, and we were realizing that we won't get away any longer without becoming PCI compliant. Also, some interesting thing was that this customer that we have required that we should work in an agile way. So we said, okay, that's fine. What is agile? This was like, I think it was 9-10 years ago. And we said that, yeah, we can try that, no problem. And we tried it, and it works pretty well. And we have done that ever since, and we're working agile in the whole company now, more or less. So, what is PCI DSS then? Well, it's a standard that the payment card industry have taken out to actually secure the payment data in various places in the acquirers, issuers, the POS stations, whatever you have nowadays, small devices that you can have in small shops when you do payments. And it's divided into different areas. 1 and 2 is network and systems. 2, 3, and 4 is about protecting cardholder data. 5 and 6 is vulnerability management program, and there also in 6 is the SDLC, the software development. 7, 8, 9, access control measures. 10, 11, monitor and test networks, and the 12 is like an overall policies for everything. Some examples from PCI DSS is 6.1, for instance, establish a process to identify security vulnerabilities using reputable outside sources of security vulnerability information. 6.5, address common coding vulnerabilities of software development processes. 8.1, define and implement policies and procedures to ensure proper user identification management. 3.1, keep cardholder data storage to minimum by implementing data retention and disposal policies, and so on and so forth. So there are about 200 plus requirements. So we started this journey many years ago, and in the beginning it was quite an explorative phase. I call it the chaos period. We hired consultants, of course, because we needed help from the outside, and it was very chaotic. A lot of ideas, a lot of things that we wonder, how should we do this? In what way, which area do we need to fix first and then after, and so on. So it was a lot of ideas, and we divided the work into different areas: the physical security, the work tools, the network and security, I/O, servers and databases, and then the software development. And it was quite a tough period. But in the end, one approach was chosen when we had mangled this for months, and okay, consultants, we have had your help, but now we will take it from here. And we focus on the requirements and really try to work out what is the intent of the requirement. And then we just came up with solutions. Okay, we solved it like this, and we checked it with the QSA, and it said, nah. Okay, well, no. We went back, fixed some. Is it okay now? Yes. And that way we just incrementally fixed everything. So in the end, we passed. And after that, we have had 8 assessments. And we are actually in the assessment period right now. I was quite involved in the SDLC part. So there are a lot of requirements in the PCI DSS that is on the software development lifecycle. And the current SDLC that we had was not working, or did we have one? I don't remember even. So we had to create a new one, and this is not exactly what we have, but it's pretty basic. I mean, this is very common. So change request, for instance, you have the story breakdown. Changes are coming in there. You need to come up with technical solutions. So there we try to also include security aspects as early as possible to see that, okay, does this include GDPR? Will this include the handling of sensitive data and so on? And what do we need to do and take height for that? And then the second is the development process, and it's an iterative process. And there we have added a lot of testing, and the code review is the main part of the security there. And the code review is quite important, and tied to the code review is also the use of a secure development guideline that we have. So they work in like conjunction with each other. And then we put the release candidates in a pipeline and test as much as we can. And then we have the release process after that. And there we also have things that are connected to PCI DSS and security, like risk assessment, rollback and release planning, and so on. Some of the processes that I want to lift forward that have came with PCI DSS is the code review. So it's like the 4I principle. So everything that you write and check in, someone else needs to actually sign off and code review it. And for that, we're using a Bitbucket plugin because we needed, there were loopholes. You could sneak in code even though you can set in Bitbucket that at least 2 persons need to confirm one PR. And another thing is that we have divided our applications into different categorization. First of all, we have the applications as sort of assets, and we categorize them and do some sort of threat modeling, like what do they access? Are they public facing? Do they handle cardholder data and so on? And along with that, we have documentations tied to it, what categorizes they are in, what they log and so on. And yeah, that's what I have about the applications. Then we have the release checkpoints, risk assessment, and rollback routines, etc. Another thing about the application that we have introduced is application hardening. We have currently moved away from JBoss. We're just running one application there right now, so we moved away to Spring Boot. But we have like hardening guidelines for using JBoss and Spring Boot, just to make sure that we disable all the unused things like HTTPS and so on. And overall, we need to keep track of all the changes that we do. So everything that we put in production, we need to have some sort of trail, what it belongs to. And of course, we use, for that purpose, Jira. So we assemble all the Jiras that are going into a release, and we gather them into one place and tie them to a version. So we can track back afterwards and see what have we done and when. About the security and quality, we are usually thinking security and quality by design. That is usually the best approach. And to help us with that, currently we have one repository where all our code is. There are good things and bad things about that. So when it grows, of course, we have maybe like 200 libraries in there, so it's quite big. So at some point we need to split it out. But right now it have its advantages. So we have one platform POM with global versions. So we have one place where we have our versions for Spring and Apache Commons and whatnot. And that is very helpful also in the perspective that when we get these vulnerabilities in our code, we need to be able to patch them within 30 days. And if we just have one place where we change the versions and then we just build everything and push it out and test it, then it becomes much easier. Another thing that we have found during the way is keeping the tech stack simple is a quite nice approach. Sounds maybe kind of boring, but in the end of the day, it's the security and the production and simplicity. It's what matters most. And I mean, before we did a bit of work in this area, we had like 4 frameworks for doing mocking. Why would we need that? And the more libraries you have, the more conflicts you may have, and the more things may be vulnerable in the end. And usually fewer things can also accomplish what you need to do. We use static analysis SonarQube to some extent to at least visualize what we have. Another thing that we have, which I think is quite a good thing, is the Spring Boot starters. So we're utilizing Spring Boot starters, which is kind of, okay, you have the Spring Boot application where you actually run your code, okay, you have an account application, but that takes in dependencies from these Spring Boot starters, which actually sets this application up regarding to security and log management and configurations and so on. So so we have these starters in the center place, and all of our application draws in those dependencies, and we get this sort of security and this setup things for free. Security coding guidelines, I have also mentioned that. That is also an important part that we have. And in conjunction with that, we have the code review also. I want to mention some of the technical enablers that we are using. We have, like Brian said, do you know which libraries you use? Yes. Do you know which ones are vulnerable? Yes. Do you know how fast you can patch them? Yes. We have the answer for all those questions. 8-10 years back, we didn't have it. So what we did then was that we needed something for our library management, and there weren't that many players around. We found Nexus repository, and we found it very attractive. So we have used that also with the Nexus IQ server for scanning for vulnerabilities ever since, and we have been very happy with it. We also use Graded Enterprise for reporting of our builds. That is a nice tool. And of course, we have Jenkins builds, and we create vulnerability reports at least once per day from our production versions that we have. Currently, we have manual checks for the vulnerabilities, but that is not a big problem right now because we don't have that many vulnerabilities. And those we have are the usual suspects. There are some libraries that there exist vulnerabilities in which seems to never be fixed. and I don't know why, but that's the way it is. And talk about third-party libraries, we don't use them. Oh yes, of course, we use a lot of them. And with it, there comes also problems, of course. And one thing is that we need to use components from reliable sources. So that is why one reason that we use Nexus repository. Is everything from Maven Central safe to use? I don't think so, but that's how we treat them right now anyways. Using components from reliable sources, I have a good example of that. We had a couple of years ago, we were using database driver from Oracle that weren't official. So, and we found out when we did some digging about some performance issues. That was an eye-opener for us. We had actually uploaded it into our Nexus, and we had used it in production for years, but we hadn't noticed. There wasn't anything dangerous with that version, but we needed after that to have a better process in that regard. We use Nexus Repository to manage an Arca server, and said that also. How we deal with the vulnerable versions is that usually we need to sort out a dependency tree. Sometimes you can just exclude the library because it's not needed. So that may be the best thing to do. Other than that, of course, you check if there is a version that is green and fixed. If there isn't, we analyze the impact of the vulnerabilities in the version. Usually we are not affected by it. Another option then is to change the libraries to something else. And if that is not possible, well, we have to keep the component and try to mitigate the risk in some other way. Looking ahead, we think we are going into continuous delivery maybe sometime in the future. And also that will also then affect these things regarding security and PCI DSS. So we need to do things in a smarter way. I mean, if you need to do all these heavy process things, it doesn't really play good with pushing a button and pushing something into production. So we need to figure that out. AVS journey have started for us also. We're doing a bit of lift and shift approach there, mainly because we would like to offload the on-prem resources and personnel there. Automating of processes is always something that we need to be better at. And quick feedback loop for developers. We feel that right now it takes us a bit too long before we actually acknowledge that there is something wrong, mainly because of our pipeline takes a bit too long. So we need to be better there. One other thing is to maybe stop the libraries in the Nexus repository so the developers can't even download them. And we have been looking into Nexus Firewall for that. And also we'll probably look into some sort of process regarding taking in new libraries in our code. Okay, so here's one vulnerability that we had some time ago about Guava. And we just removed Guava and used other libraries for it. Another Netcodec example. And here you see that you get a nice graph in Nexus IQ server, and it shows you the versions that exist and which one you can use. So that's kind of nice. And here just upgrade to the new version. But usually these are cataloged quite quickly, but they are not that quick tagging them as vulnerable. So usually when the new version comes, it seems to be green, but after a week or so, they have cataloged it and they have tagged it with the same vulnerability as the previous version. But we don't have any choice anyway, so we usually just update to the latest versions anyways. Yeah, a couple of more suggestions. Yearly security development training. That is one thing that we have. It's really good to connect with the developers and have communication flowing with them. The continuous security feedback loop is also very important, I think. When we find things, we tell everybody else that now you should watch out for this one. Log reviews is really helpful also. We do log reviews daily, and once in a while, also once per month or so, we dig in a little deeper into the logs, and usually we find quite a lot of interesting things that we can fix and that we fix. Of course, fix the vulnerabilities early and work on your feedback loop. Keeping track of the important data flows is also important, I think. What is it that you need to protect more, and what do you need to protect less? Where do you have your important data? Reviewing your tools and processes at least once a year I think is also a good thing. And keeping a balance of everything. If it's not working, then you need to try something else. And I feel that I've been quite stringent early in my career, but now I'm like, yeah, okay. If it's not working, it's not working, and let's discuss it with the developers. How can we make this work in another way? Because of course, some things you need to enforce because of requirements, but some things you can probably discuss. I want to end this on a personal note. I think it's quite important nowadays that you take some time off from work and have some good time and do some personal development. In the beginning, I said that what I like to do is to build violins, and this is my latest project. It's a violin on like Stradivarius style, and it's a bit rough around the edges still, and no varnish. And I've been working on this one for 2 years maybe. It's a slow process, but for me, relaxing after work is to build things, and yeah, that's what I like to do. And when I started with this quite many years ago, it was like a blank paper for me, and I didn't know how to build a violin. But you know, I knew things from my IT career, and I found out that there are quite a lot of similarities. Like you need to know the domain and what to build and how it should work, and you need to learn how to build it to improve your skill set, and you need the tools and the material and so on. And after you are done, you like can sit back and enjoy and like say that, yeah, now I have accomplished this and I'm quite happy about it. And finally, in the end of the day, you probably also need a good set of sharp tools to get the job done. And that was all I had. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Johan. I must say I really like that violin that you're working on. I myself actually started building guitars just a few weeks ago, so I'm in the same learning boat.
Oh, yes. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yes. There was a couple of questions. We are a bit pressed on time, but let's have at least one or two. Marco is asking, do you use some centralized log management or analyzing system?
Yes, we're using Splunk. We are currently moving away from Splunk, which is, in my opinion, quite sad because I really like Splunk. So we're using Splunk, and it's a really good tool.
There was also a question from Johan. What Bitbucket plugin do you use for pull request reviews?
Yes, one that we have built ourselves because there isn't any that is working out there. So homemade stuff.
Right. Well, thanks once again, Johan, for this awesome presentation. And